Everyone, and welcome to Getting Started with Video Storytelling with my internet. But I am really glad to be here with all of you. And if you're tuning in and joining me for this training, I'd love for you to say hi in the comments. It's always great to see who's here with us. And I always love interacting with all of you and answering your questions, which is always really great. My name is Vanessa Lockshin, and I'm the president of the Storytelling Nonprofit, a training and consulting company that works with nonprofit organizations to help them tell stories that raise money and awareness. And I am really excited to be here. So you're tuning into Getting Started with Video Storytelling. And, video content and video storytelling is something that's such an awesome opportunity for nonprofit organizations. And yet, really often, I hear from organizations that, they're not sure what to do to get started. They feel like there's a lot of technical or equipment barriers, which definitely can be true. And that really prevents them from getting started and taking advantage of this great opportunity they have in the digital content space and digital fundraising space. So today, my plan is to offer you 5 tips to get started with video storytelling in the hopes that it'll provide you with a bit of a roadmap for getting started with your organization. And I'll say some of these have come from my own experience with video. Here at the Storytelling Nonprofit, we do quite a bit of video. And so I've learned quite a bit over the last few years. Mostly just by kind of self-teaching, but also doing a lot of reading and research. So hopefully be able to shorten that learning curve for you. And I'm really excited to share that. Hey, Rhonda, and welcome. I see we have a couple other people tuning in, which is great. Welcome to all of you. And if you're watching this after the live stream has happened, you might see me or hear me, I should say, referring to comments that are showing up. My understanding is that you may not be able to see these after the live stream happens. So if you're thinking, Vanessa referenced something and I don't know what she's talking about, it's probably because it's in the live stream comments. So anyways, welcome to the folks at Second Harvest Northwest. Great to have you here. And I think this is going to be a really fun session today. So really excited to have all of you here. So as I said, I'm going to share 5 tips for getting started with video storytelling to give you some just initial steps and ways to get started. And I would also love to answer your questions as well. So I'll leave time at the end for some Q&A, and we'll do some questions and answers, and hopefully be able to help you out with some of your storytelling as well. So let's go ahead and get started and just jump right in. So I wanted to ask you all a question as we get started. Does your organization tell stories using video right now? And if you say yes in the comments, let me know what kind of platforms or tools you're using. Maybe you're doing live stream video, maybe you're recording videos for your website, that kind of thing. Let me know. I'd just love to hear your experience and hear what kind of, perspective and experience you're bringing to the table. That's always great to see. So let me know in the comments. I would say most of the organizations I've worked with in the last year or so have done a lot of live streaming video. They are really thinking about leveraging live stream as a type of way to connect with their audiences. Some are thinking about doing pre-recorded, produced videos, but I think a lot of us suddenly think, oh gosh, like if we do that, we have to have a lot of money to do those videos, which is not the case, and I want to talk about that. Yeah, Rhonda, so you said not yet. And I think a lot of organizations are still in that boat, right? Like maybe we don't feel comfortable being on camera, or maybe we're not sure what to do, or we feel like we have to buy thousands of dollars worth of equipment to get started, right? There's so many things that can feel like barriers to starting in this process. The folks at Second Harvest did a bit on Instagram and social. Definitely, those are great places to be doing that. And with IGTV now, that's another platform to be able to share your videos. And Marty, you said, we don't use video stories now, but you want to start, which is great. So you're all in the right place. We'll talk about all these things here today. All right, so let's go ahead and just dive right into it. So I thought I would just share my approach to getting started with video and some of the ways I've shared this with some of my students as well in the last year. So hopefully it'll help you. So the first place that I recommend you start is when thinking about video and video content, think about creating content buckets or themes for what you want to share with your audience. I'll explain what I mean by that. And if you've followed me for a while through the Storytelling Nonprofit, you've probably heard me say, you should never for the sake of telling a story. I say that all the time. There's a really good reason for it. It's such a waste of your time and resources to be out there just producing content for the sake of producing content. I really want to encourage you to be intentional and strategic with what you're doing. And to that end, one of the things that I think is really beneficial for organizations from a video perspective is to think about what are the key topics or themes or like buckets of ideas that we want to communicate through video to our audience? And if you think about it as like your video programming, maybe you think about a television station and you think, well, like they have like television shows, they have news, they have like talk shows. There's all these different like buckets of things that they have on their television channel over the course of a day or even the course of a week. You can take a similar approach to your video to be organized. And one of the reasons I suggest this is that it will help you think about what you're going to talk about in a much more organized way. And again, helping bring some of that level of strategy, which I think is really useful. So I always recommend organizations think about 2 to 5 topics that they think they'd like to cover in a recurring nature on video. And this could be true even in other types of content you're producing. And so let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. So let's say I worked for, domestic violence shelter, and we were going to produce video content as a part of our digital content strategy. So some topics I might cover are things like our programs, like maybe I'll talk about our programs in some videos. Another thing I might talk about is donor impact. So I want to showcase that and connect donors to what they make possible. And maybe the third topic is more of like PSA type informational videos where I talk about, the statistics around domestic violence, the cycle of abuse, things like that. So those are 3 kind of big, broad ideas that we might cover in video. And I'll talk about do next with those. But my action for you as you're getting started is to just brainstorm a list of possible topics and ideas, things that you might want to cover, things that are interesting to you. And again, they don't have to be anything, that feels really out of reach. Think of really practical things you could talk about. Your organization is an expert at the work you do. You can share that information, share that expertise. That's a really great place to start. And I'll talk about a little bit more in depth how you can move into that. So let's go ahead and get into the second tip, which is an extension of this one. So one of the things you want to do then is develop video ideas for each of the content buckets that you identify. So this is where you get to expand your brainstorming a little bit more and think about what is one specific thing I'm going to talk about or tackle in a video that we might produce. So this is the point at which you can start to think about what are the specific stories or narrative that we might cover in a video that we're producing, and where you can kind of go into a bit more detail. So going back to the example I shared of the domestic violence shelter, let's talk about under the umbrella of like PSA or informational videos they might share. I might list ideas like statistics about domestic violence in the region. I might talk about like the impact of domestic violence on children, the cycle of domestic violence, how to help someone who might be experiencing domestic violence, how to get out of a domestic violence situation. These are all topics I might potentially cover in one specific video, and I might find a story to tie into that. So I might have a staff member who can speak to this, or I might have a volunteer who might want to be featured in a video who can tell a story that connects to that idea. The idea here is just for you to really go down to a granular level and think about what is it that we're trying to convey and how does that connect to this larger kind of web of communications that we have where we are strategically communicating messages to our audience. That's really important. As I said earlier, I would hate for you to spend a lot of time and resources on video and not really get great results from it. So this stage and this planning is all about being able to be strategic in that regard. So if you were to take an action step for this, and I hope you do, it's to really, again, look at your content buckets or your ideas and then start to brainstorm specific ideas for each of those that you might be able to execute on in video. And at this stage, one of the other things I'll also say is, don't limit yourself. You might write ideas down and you think, wow, like that's pie in the sky. Are we ever going to be able to do that? And I want to say that's okay. Just be creative. Pursue. But this is a really great starting point to just actually list all of these things down and just get started in this way. All right, so I'm going to go on to the third tip, which is probably going to be a really useful one for a lot of you. And this is where we start to get into what I think of as like the brass tacks of the video itself. So I always think it's really important for you to choose both the type and the style of video that you'll use for your content, for the different videos that you might It has to be perfectly edited, all of these things. And I want to tell you that's not the case. There's lots of ways to tell video and to share stories through video. And I think one of the amazing things about live stream and the evolution of social media in the last couple of years is that there's even more of an opportunity to share unpolished videos. Like that is becoming a norm in the social media context. And it's really okay. Like it doesn't have to be perfect. And sometimes those like more rough behind the scenes looks of things are great and audiences love seeing that. So that's something to keep in mind. So let me talk about the type of video first, and then we'll talk about the style of video, because I think those are two separate concepts which are important to differentiate in all of this. So in terms of type of video, there's so many things you could do. So you could do like a voiceover video over, slides or some kind of screen share that maybe you'd record. You could do an educational video. You could do tutorials or explanations. You could do a behind the scenes look at something at your organization. Maybe, I don't know, like the history of your building or the history of the area where you work, things like that. You could do profiles of staff, clients, board members, anyone who's really a part of the stakeholder audience in your organization. You could do some FAQs where you answer frequently asked questions about your organization. You could do a thank you video. You could do interviews. You could do a vlog type video that you might like vlog a day in the life of your organization. You could also record events and do event-based videos and tell stories about events that your organization is doing, or even maybe programs or services that you're offering. This is a very big list. I'm running through a lot of ideas. But again, just to get you thinking outside of the box that I think we normally have video pegged in, there's a lot of ways to do video that don't involve you being on camera or don't involve anyone really at your organization being on camera. And that don't require you to have a massive budget in order to be able to do them well. So I would encourage you to think about this list. And as you're listening and tuning in live, let me know if any of those appeal to you, or maybe they're ones you've tried before, or maybe a new idea has been sparked for you and you think, oh yeah, we could maybe try that. I would love to hear what those are. And in terms of style of video, so this is the other piece. So certainly live stream is an option, right? We have like Facebook Live, we have Instagram, we have YouTube Live. There's so many different platforms now for live streaming where you can reach your audience, which is really great. You could do a pre-recorded video. You could do an animated video. You could do a voiceover as well. I think I mentioned that earlier, but there's lots of ways to be able to actually create that video and lots of styles for it. And so it's useful to think about what those are. And based on your organization, like its goals, the type of story you want to tell, what are the best matches for that in terms of the type of video and the style that you might use? There are, as I said, really so many options you can choose based on your budget and your comfort level with video. I really think an easy option for a lot of beginners is doing either a live stream, which is great because there's no editing involved, which I know is a barrier for a lot of organizations, or doing a voiceover type video, which can be really simple. In fact, maybe you know this or maybe you don't, but one of the things you can do is actually use PowerPoint to create like the background for the video that you might voice over. And you can actually record in PowerPoint and add your voiceover to it to like record the video right there. Maybe its mission, how it got started in this work. That's a really great tool to be able to use. The point in all of this, just to line it for all of you who are tuning in, is to just press record and start. I think it's so important to just start practicing, to start getting more comfortable with whatever type of video it is you want to produce. And I would encourage you to just start. Start before you're ready and start before it's completely perfect. It probably never will be perfect, but this is a really great place to be able to start and to be able to just start getting your feet wet and getting moving with this process. And on that note, the other thing I'll also share is that in terms of equipment, because I'm sure some of you might be wondering, like, what should we actually use? I would really encourage you to use the best equipment you already have. And I think for many of you, that will be your smartphones. Smartphones have fantastic cameras on them these days, and you could film a lot on them. Whether it's a live stream, you could go live right on your phone. You could pre-record some video and then upload it to your computer as in an editing software. I'm looking for my phone, which is nowhere around right now. But one thing I would say, if you do record video that you plan on editing on your phone, make sure you just turn it horizontally and not vertically. So that way you actually get the right screen size for that video. Anyways, lots of things to do with that, but I think that's a really great place to start. All right, I know I'm moving along here. So I just want to talk about two other points I have for you to help you get started. The next one is that editing can be very simple or even non-existent, I think, in some cases. I feel like for a lot of organizations, editing is like the big barrier to producing video because you think you have to have a high production value, or it has to look really slick when it's done, which doesn't have to be the case. But there are a lot of ways to, I think, make it simpler and not overcomplicate it for ourselves. One of the things that I think is a real benefit of live streaming as a video mechanism for storytelling is that there is no editing involved. You just do the live stream, maybe you prepare for it and do whatever you need to do to prepare, but then you don't have to edit it afterwards. Like once you've done it, it's done, which is a really good benefit of it. If you do choose to edit, like you record some videos and you want to edit them afterwards, I have to say one of the easiest tools I found to use, and I am by no means really technically savvy with video editing, has been Windows Movie Maker Pro 10. I've really enjoyed using this. I bought the pro version, not the free version, and I think it was like $10. It was a great $10 investment. There are lots of video editing programs out there, and I found this one was just really probably less than an hour to learn the ins and outs of it. And I felt really confident and I've gained more confidence using it, which has been nice. All right, last thing I just want to say, and then we'll do some questions and answers, is to just start. And I know I said this earlier, but I think some of you might be thinking, is that really a tip? But I think this is really important with video in particular, because the only way you'll get more confident, you'll gain confidence and improvement of your skills is to practice and start making videos. So if you've been tentative, if you're not sure about it, but you want to do it, I really want to encourage you to start before you're ready. Start this afternoon even. And you can practice recording things and filming things without ever having to share them with people, just to kind of get a feel for what's happening and get a feel for what it could be like for you and your organization to make videos. So practice, take your camera out this afternoon. It's a Friday afternoon in the summer. So see if you can find a few minutes to just practice recording some things and see how your phone camera works, or maybe the camera on your computer, and just try it out and see where that can take you. I think that's a really great place to start. All right, so those were my 5 tips to help you get started. And I know I went through those pretty quickly. So I do want to answer your question. Find them. So the folks at First United, hi to all of you. So glad you could join us. Do I have recommendations for good examples of videos for you to check out? Yeah, I think there's lots of great places you can look for good video. One that I recently saw, and I will say this is like more produced video, was Best Friends Animal Society. They have a great YouTube page with tons of really interesting examples of videos, like, and a wide range of content in those videos. That might be one you want to check out. And I think this is the First United I'm thinking about. You might also want to look at Union Gospel Mission in your area. I think the one in Vancouver is the one I'm thinking of. They have done some really good video in the past, and you might want to check that out as well. Let's see. I think for live streaming, one of the ones that I've seen and liked has been Monterey Bay Aquarium. They do some really interesting live streams, in particular for taking people behind the scenes at what they're doing, which is really interesting. And a lot of times your audience wants to know what's going on at your organization. And I think they do a really good job, like pulling the curtain back and giving people a sense of what that is. Yeah, Rhonda, so what do you think is the ideal length of a video? Yes, I get to ask this question all the time, and for stories in general and for video. I think it really depends on your audience. So this is the benefit of just producing videos and having some metrics to look at, because you'll learn quite a bit about what your audience retention rate is like depending on the platform. And I would use that information to figure out an ideal length of the video. So I'll give you an example from my own video making. On YouTube, for instance, I know our audience retention rate is at about like the 3 minute 30 second mark. which is a lot shorter than, like, for example, this video is, but that's okay. And that's really helpful for me because when I make videos, I then think about, well, maybe trying to get it around that time is like an ideal time or length for the video. And it varies, right? So I would encourage you to look at your organization's social media analytics. If you've produced some videos, those are all good places to start. If you don't have any benchmarks for yourself yet, a really, I think a ideal like ballpark range, and this is a very big ballpark range, is somewhere between like 2 minutes to 5 minutes. And you may want to keep it on the shorter side if you've never done a lot of video and you're a little unsure about the editing process and everything. Keeping it shorter might be more beneficial so that you don't have quite as big of a project to deal with. And that can help, I think, kind of lessen our anxiety about the whole thing for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad that's helpful. Yeah, I think there's so many, I think with video, so much of your improvement and ability to make better video comes in time when you have some analytics and benchmarking that you can work from. And I mentioned this before in one of our YouTube videos, but I really think that while industry best practices and benchmarking is very useful, like there's a place for that. Some of what I think is so much more beneficial for organizations is to create your own benchmarks. And I say that because if you think about like benchmarks you see from some of these big companies in our sector, like Blackbaud, for instance, who produces a lot of benchmarking around giving and online giving, things like that, their sample size of organizations, like what that nonprofit's data looks like in their fundraising program, might be very different from your organization. Maybe it's a lot larger, or maybe it's a lot smaller. Maybe their team is, significantly bigger. Maybe they've just been around a lot longer and they've had the advantage, time, and maturity to build up that fundraising program. And so I think sometimes not being able to account for those factors when we compare our benchmarks to industry ones puts us at a bit of a disadvantage, which is why I always recommend that organizations look at developing their own benchmarks. Look at your own data year over year, your own average gift size, your own donor retention, and with video, for instance, like your audience retention, the number of views you're getting, the number of action takers you get from video. All of these things I think can be really beneficial to look at and can be a better indicator of your success and improvement than some of these other benchmarks might be. That is my soapbox about industry benchmarks, but I hope it's useful for you. I just think one of the things I see anyways with a lot of our clients and students is that they get so deterred by the fact that there's organizations that are like much more successful than they are at certain things, or maybe like so much farther along in their maturity. And I think that comparing yourself to them can be difficult and deterring sometimes. And so I try to encourage them to take a step back from the comparison, which I think often cripples a lot of us, right? Yeah, Ryan, so what are some best goals to set for ourselves with video? Number one, I think just starting. If you haven't started yet, that's a really good one. It depends on what platform you're using for video. But another one that I think is a really interesting indicator is audience retention. So I think if over time you see your audience retention growing with the video, that means you're probably producing better content that's more interesting to your audience, and you're getting them to watch the full thing, which is very useful, or maybe close to it. I usually look for video retention at the end of the video to be at least 50% or higher. And so if over time I see it's growing from that, that's great. That's a really good indicator that things are improving. So that's a good one to look at. You might also just want to look at your video as a tool for other things. I didn't articulate that very well, like your video as a mechanism to achieving other goals. And so by that, I mean, if you're telling video with the goal of driving donations, like what impact might your video have had on that fundraising campaign? Or, if you're telling video with the goal of, getting petition signatures or doing some other sort of goal that you want action that you want people to take, look at that campaign with the video compared to maybe campaigns where you didn't use a video, and think about, has that impacted this larger goal that we had for the video, or this kind of role the video was playing in a campaign. I think that can also be another useful one to think about. But I would just go back to the first one I said, which is just to start. And to also make sure that you watch your own videos, which might be nerve-wracking for some of you, but watch them, think about things you can improve, think about ways you want to improve your videos. But just starting is sometimes, I think, the most important goal for a lot of us. And then over some amount of time, as we get consistent with it, you can start to identify bigger goals that you might want to tackle. For sure. Yeah. These are great questions. Happy to answer more if some of you have other questions you'd like me to tackle. And I was just trying to think if I had any other tips for all of you about things. Not offhand. If you have questions about video or getting started, definitely let me know. I'm happy to answer those for you. And just really happy and grateful all of you tuned in this afternoon. I have not done a it was a little bit of a different setup than Facebook Live, but that's okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up because I'm realizing we're about like 25 minutes in and I don't want to take up your whole afternoon. But thank you so much for joining me. I do really appreciate you all tuning in today. I am interested in doing more trainings like this. So let me know if there's other topics you'd like me to cover. If you'd like me to talk a little bit more about video editing or even show you my own process for video editing, I'm happy to record a video about that. So let me know in the comments, and also be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I post new videos twice a week these days. Would love to have you back for another one of our videos or even a live training to help you out with your storytelling, fundraising, and communications. I hope you all have an awesome